people are literally being arrested for posting on the internet in the middle of the night. I mean, that's how bad it's got. That's how prepared they are to exercise state control over people, and they can't be given an inch. This is a war. They are the enemy.
Welcome to Deprogram. This is the New Culture Forum show where we do our best to fight back against the forces of ideological conformity, particularly among the young. My name is Harrison Pitt. I am a fellow at the New Culture Forum, and I am thrilled to be joined today, as ever, by my trusty co-host, Connor Tomlinson, who is one of the leading contributors at Courage Media and the host of Tomlinson Talks, and our very special guest this week, the former Prime Minister Liz Truss, who is also the Sunday Times bestselling author of 10 Years to Save the West. Connor, Liz, thank you very much for joining us.
Great pleasure.
So Keir Starmer and David Lammy have accused Nigel Farage and Reform UK of being racist enemies of Britain, effectively defining Britain in the process as more British the more foreign, and therefore less British it is, which strikes me as a bit of a paradox. But Farage has come out swinging in response and claims to be more determined than ever to destroy the uniparty in Britain. In your view, is this a sign of the right finally learning that we should take our own side and not genuflect to our adversaries?
Well, clearly Labour are extremely desperate, and this is the same strategy the Democrats used against Trump. And of course, it didn't work. But it's an attempt to try and unite the Labour Party, unite the left against a enemy. And what he's essentially doing is accusing Farage of all the crimes he's guilty of, which is being completely anti-British, failing to deal with small boats, failing to deliver anything as Prime Minister. And so I think it's a failed strategy, but I guess the question you're asking is, what should the response to that be? And too often in the past, Conservatives in general, when accused of being racist, haven't said, well, this is a load of nonsense. They've tried to excuse themselves and apologise or whatever else. And it's very important, and Trump shows this. It's very important not to apologise for being a Conservative, not apologising to say it's the right thing to deport illegal immigrants. You can't apologise. And that seems to be what Farage, this line Farage is taking. Because
once you apologise, once you defend yourself, you sort of suggest that the accusation is being made in good faith, whereas of course it never is.
And it's not. And it's, this is the opposite of good faith. This is incredibly cynical, what Starmer and the Labour Party are doing. And I believe the public now know this. I think there's been a massive shift. I think the shift has a lot to do with the move from mainstream media to online media. But I think people just see through this. And I think it's why Starmer is the most unpopular Prime Minister on record. It's why people are so unhappy with government. And he's doubling down on that. As
Liz says, Connor, there's a sense in which Starmer's trying to consolidate his base of support within the Labour Party by making this accusation, because it's one thing that can get that otherwise very fractured party unified in a chorus. Farage is a racist, Farage is a racist. This goes down well. Problem is, of course, is that according to Sir John Curtis, the kind of veteran pollster, Labour are hemorrhaging support in all directions. And so by consolidating it on to his left doesn't necessarily ensure that you're going to prevent hemorrhaging to your right. And so it is very difficult to see how Starmer can scrape all of this support together at the moment.
Yeah, the reason the line of attack doesn't work is sort of threefold, I suppose. First of all, because Labour's own base are so low in IQ and impulse control that even though they've made the concession of recognising the state of Palestine, they're still interrupting Rachel Reeves' speech by shrieking about it. So they aren't even appealing to their own base. The second one is because Farage, and to his credit as well, Zia Yusuf, immediately went on the attack, repudiated the line by saying, we don't recognise this as being in good faith. We were extending courtesy to you before, and we thought that you were embarking on the shared project of trying to rehabilitate our country, even though you disagreed on marginal tax rates. We didn't think we had existential, irreconcilable visions of the country. It turns out we do, and now we're going to destroy you. And Yusuf also pointed out, using the phrase stochastic terrorism that was thrown out by the Democrats in the 2020 to 2024 election cycle while they were busy inciting violence against Trump, Yusuf said, look, Charlie Kirk just got shot by a alleged assassin who wrote "Hey fascist, catch on the bullet," when you say Farage is a fascist, when David Lammy thinks Farage was born in the 1920s and joined the Hitler Youth somehow and calls him a Nazi, you are inciting violence against him. You know what you're doing. You're trying to get us killed. And therefore, if you're going to do that to us, we're going to give you no grace. And the third reason this line of attack sucks is because it's totally insincere when they're fighting on our ground. Because the moment you turn around and say, well, this accusation is not morally legitimate, they then have to try and make themselves out to have legitimacy behind the accusation, which means they try and position themselves as more patriotic than you.
Yes.
And so what did you see? No pride flags, no Palestine flags, no EU flags, the English and British flag instead. But it's an insincere way of waving the flag because they're saying Britain is for everyone, which means literally anyone around the world who declares themselves British is as British as you and me. So Britain is now a foreign country, made stronger by the fact that we are a vessel for foreign nationals.
Yes.
And so the English both do not exist and do not have a claim to their own country. Whereas Reform is coding, especially with its stronger immigration policies in recent weeks, coding as Britain belongs to you and we are going to prioritise you.
Yes.
And so by conceding ground to say we want to argue on Reform's terms, they're always going to lose.
That's right. What did you think, Liz, of the Reformers' recent announcements on indefinite leave to remain? Did you see that as an example of them sort of seizing the discourse for once?
Yeah, I think it's the right policy.
You do?
It's absolutely the right policy.
Why do you think it's the right policy?
Because otherwise, the so-called Boris wave becomes permanent.
Yes,
and that's why it's the right policy.
And so, but
it was what happened in 2020, 2021 was the wrong policy.
I completely agree.
And you need so yes, it's the right policy.
I completely agree with that, of course. But the claim that people make, and I should say that I don't agree with it, but I'm curious to hear what you think. It's bad what's happened since 2021, but this is a migration flow that occurred in good faith under the laws that were operative in Britain at the time, and there's something cruel about reversing those arrangements retrospectively.
Well, the government always does retrospective. I mean, look at things like the windfall tax on oil and gas. That was a retrospective action. And this just comes down to the fundamental point. And I was having an argument actually with a lawyer the other day about the Human Rights Act. And, and she was saying to me, well, what about if these people end up getting tortured in their own countries? And what I said is the priority of the British government should be British people.
Yes.
That is the priority. If somebody is a British citizen, that is a different situation. But these people are not British citizens. And what has happened is the human rights of non-British citizens has been prioritised over the human rights of British citizens.
That's right.
That's the fundamental problem. That's the fundamental problem, and it needs to be fixed.
If someone invades your home on a cold January night at 4:00 in the morning, and they don't have a home of their own, and you reserve your right as a homeowner to expel them and protect your family accordingly because you don't know this person, and they then freeze to death in the cold that evening, you can't be held responsible for that.
But they do have homes of their own. This is also the thing.
Well, that's also
I understand your analogy, and I agree with it.
But on the non-refoulement point, potentially dangerous homes of their own.
Sure, but I want to unpack that. First of all, being sent back to Nairobi or Lahore or New Delhi is not a death sentence.
No, indeed not.
And if politicians who are advocating for the Boris wave to remain indefinitely think that it is a death sentence, they have to
But I don't think, is anybody really advocating for that apart from the Labour Party?
As in, what, that they remain here indefinitely?
Yeah.
I don't think the Conservative Party's policy at the moment replies retrospectively either.
I don't think it does.
I think it's just a 5-year extension.
It just extends it, so it kind of kicks the can down the road, as I understand it. Although Kemi Badenoch announced that a good year or so ago, didn't she?
I suspect it will change very quickly.
Yeah, they're in an arms race.
I just think on that issue, I think the consensus has shifted.
Yeah,
very
quite
significant.
But then the politicians themselves, like the Labour Party, have to, and they never will because they live in cognitive dissonance, try and explain why those countries are so intolerable for the Boris wave to return to, without sounding like they're blaming the people who have come over and the people living in the countries they've come from making the countries more undesirable compared to Britain, which then they would have to say, well, Britain obviously has a superior culture, which is why they're here in the first place, which would then be racist by their own definition. So they're just going to tie themselves in knots.
But I think the fundamental point here is whose priority should the British government be? Who are British citizens who voted the government in? And that should be the priority. It's as simple as that.
Hello, please excuse this brief interruption, but I'd be really grateful if you could please hit the subscribe button and subscribe to our channel. Our mission is vitally important, and we must grow this channel to ensure that our content reaches the biggest possible audience. The best way to do this is for you to subscribe. It's totally free. And in addition to subscribing, if you're able to donate or join our membership scheme, please click on the link in the description or visit our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. We've got great plans ahead, but we can't do it without your support. From only £4 per month, you'll receive a range of perks and benefits, including exclusive content. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So here's a good direction to take it in then. Shabana Mahmood got up on the stage and declared herself English, which is fascinating because she was born to two Pakistani parents, educated in Saudi Arabia, and then was at the dispatch box saying that her Sunni Muslim faith is her sort of moral North Star. So she's not legally English, she's not English by ancestry, and she's not English by religion because England has been Christian longer than it's been a unified kingdom. So
it's technically Church of England, isn't it?
Well, it was Catholic before that, but I think we can disagree where it went.
I think we
wrong.
were one established church in this country, Connor.
Yeah, I don't recognise the legitimacy of Henry VIII's divorce.
Liz Truss wants to bring back the Test Acts, I think.
I think we'll abolish them, the Great Repeal Act. However, so the question
Let's
then
not
becomes...
go down this route.
So it was your choice.
Question then becomes, the question is, who are British people? Because the Labour Party seem intent on defining literally anyone who self-identifies as British as being British, just as they say anyone who
self-identifies as a woman. But from the point of view of what we're talking about, if somebody is... I think there's a question about dual nationals, and I am concerned about, and I think we should look at dual national status, because other countries don't have dual national status, and the idea that you can just play both sides indefinitely and be a citizen of two countries. And what have we seen? We've seen the perpetuation of cultures of some countries, or some parts, in case of Pakistan, perpetuated in parts of Britain, and I think that is a concern. But my view is, if somebody is a British citizen, they should remain a British citizen. I think there's a question about dual citizens.
You were presumably in favour of Shamima Begum having her citizenship revoked.
Correct.
So there will be an exception when the person is not being made stateless because they're eligible for citizenship elsewhere, as that was the argument made by the government at the time, because under Bangladesh's jus sanguinis citizenship laws, she is technically entitled to citizenship there. And so would you make an exception in cases where people, if maybe not dual citizens, are nevertheless eligible for citizenship in a foreign country and whose presence in Britain
I think that was fair in the
is deleterious to our interests?
In the case of Begum,
So a qualified defence of revocation.
Exactly.
Good.
So you could apply that to, for example, Pakistani grooming gang perpetrators who have renounced their Pakistani citizenship to avoid deportation, which quite a lot of them did.
Annoyingly, in the case of Pakistan, I was looking it up recently because I've been doing work on citizenship at the moment for Restore Britain. Well, I'm going to be, hopefully. We'll see. Pakistan, weirdly, is one of the only countries in the world that has birthright, that doesn't have a jus sanguinis citizenship law. It has jus solis citizenship law, which is not what I expected to be the case in Pakistan, because it's a very tribal culture. You would expect it to be much more blood-focused in its understanding of citizenship than soil-focused in its understanding of citizenship. But what we could hopefully do, if you had a motivated government, was pressure Pakistan to change that state of affairs.
I think you need to use things like trade and aid.
Yes.
Those are the tools you need to use.
You were Foreign Secretary. Tell us how those tools would be used. Go on.
So, well, I mean, I'm not a great fan of aid, full stop.
Indeed.
But but I think trade is a great tool that you should use. So, for example, you say, unless you're willing to take these people back, we will put tariffs on you.
Right. Exactly. And you just kind of...
And Trump has completely changed the rules of the trade game. By the way, we could have done this with the EU to pressure them to get a better deal, which we ought to have done, in particular with agriculture tariffs, because they're a net exporter to us. But we should use those tools to achieve returns of people to the country. And that's...
Just it makes perfect sense.
It makes common sense. But there's I mean, the whole aid industry, there's this predisposition against what's known as tied aid, which is giving you should just give aid on the basis of what's morally right. It should not be tied to your nation's interest, which I think is the opposite of how you should give aid.
Yes, a sort of morally disinterested defensive aid rather than one that's tethered to your national interest.
Gus O'Donnell.
Because I think the national interest is moral.
Absolutely.
That's the fundamental point.
Yes.
I think it is moral to do the best by the citizens of your country.
That's right.
Gus O'Donnell, who used to be Blair and Brown's cabinet secretary, described this sort of perspective of telescopic philanthropy to David Goodhart. When Goodhart said, I'm writing a book about the anywheres and the somewheres and sort of the rooted people versus the political class who are detached. And Gus O'Donnell said, when I was at the Treasury, I used to argue for the most open borders migration policy possible because I believed that my obligation was to global, not national welfare.
Yes. And that is the attitude. That is everywhere. It's in the Foreign Office, it's in the Treasury, it's in Number 10. It is the attitude of the British elite. It's the attitude of everybody.
We were talking earlier about...
And if you fight against it, you are fighting a very... And actually, there are other countries that don't have tied aid, like Japan has tied aid, for example. So there are lots of examples. And Trump, of course, is pursuing a much more national economic strategy, but it is an anathema to the British government. I think it's important to understand that this isn't a recent phenomenon. This has been going for years and years and years. It dates back to the days of the League of Nations, where the government of the time, the civil service of the time, were more concerned about making the League of Nations work and the international rules than they were about the condition of the people of Britain.
That's right.
This is a very long, steeped problem of the British elite in particular. And by the way, that attitude has now infected other elites around the world.
Clearly.
But we were kind of ground zero.
We need to be, you're right, we need to be unapologetic about taking our own side. It's something that other places do instinctively. And if we're not doing it instinctively, we're going to be defeated by those who are.
Commercially.
Yeah.
It's not just about immigration policy. It's true on commercial policy. It's true on other areas of government.
Of course.
This idea that, I remember when I was Foreign Secretary, one of the top items on my brief was to question why, this is when I was visiting Singapore, why Singapore had the death penalty. And I said, well, frankly, it's none of my business, whether or not Singapore want to have the death penalty.
And I said, bring it back.
And I noticed when I went to see President Biden, that wasn't on my brief for America. It was only on my brief when I went to Singapore.
Yeah.
And the death penalty is a free vote in the House of Commons. Although I'm not a supporter of the death penalty, it's something that is a legitimate political opinion in Britain. And yet, the Foreign Office thought, this is what we want to use our political capital. We don't want to use our political capital on getting the best deal for Brits who get locked up in Singaporean jails, or we don't want to get the best trade deal. Our priority is getting rid of the Singapore death penalty.
Moral evangelism.
That's
the sort of mentality.
It's so steeped.
Very quickly,
in the government.
It's a bit of a sort of vulgar question in a way, but what was Sleepy Joe like?
Sleeping. Every meeting just took a very long time. Every meeting took a very long time and was quite rambling, is what I would say.
That checks out as far as I'm concerned. So we're talking there about the importance of taking your own side and how it's moral to take your own side. And it's something that does happen a lot, and we've touched on it already, is that the left, and very wet segments of the right, are constantly inviting us or even demanding us to make sort of ritualistic denunciations of people we may be associated with or might have mentioned at once. And you've shown great stubbornness actually in recent years on this score, not just over your notorious interview on the Lotus Eaters with the man to your left.
Oops. This man has got me in so much trouble.
A lot of trouble. But it's
amazing I still associate with him, to be honest.
It is a marvel. But you refused to climb down from that at the time, which I thought was excellent. But you've also done it in your qualified defences of Tommy Robinson that you've made on record and that you've made publicly. I think it was Bridget Phillipson who recently wrote a very sanctimonious letter to the CCHQ demanding that they get rid of you and sort of inviting you to kind of make these ritualistic denunciations of Robinson. Why have you refused to do that? What is your response to Bridget Phillipson?
Because in the interview I answered questions truthfully. And that's what I always seek to do. And what the left try and do is they try and smear, and just they've used smear tactics, cancellation tactics, debanking tactics, even in the case of Charlie Kirk assassination, to try and just stop the existence of alternative arguments.
That's right.
And we can't accept it. It's a principle that we can't accept. We can't allow ourselves to be defined by their approval, because if you end up in the kind of crazy Big Brother world we're in, where things are, even Owen Jones is now unacceptable to the Labour Party. There's a narrow window of what's acceptable to them. Farage is beyond the pale.
Well, worse than racist, as I think someone said recently.
They've got these kind of pet Tories. Rory Stewart is a classic example. These are, or David Gordon. These are all the pet Tories that it's like acceptable for the Labour Party to even say this. And that is just, we are playing on their playing field. Right. If we even engage with that, we can't engage with it because, as you said at the beginning of this show, it's not good faith.
No.
It's not good faith. It is, they are our enemies. They are pursuing an evil agenda. What do they want? They basically want Marxism. If you look at Bridget Phillipson, why did she put VAT on private schools? It wasn't to raise money. No. It was to close down private schools. Why are the Labour Party raising taxes on the wealthy? It's not because they think it's going to bring in money. It's because they don't want those people in Britain. Because they want everybody working for the state or working for a corporation that's controlled by the state.
Right.
That's their agenda. And there are too many people on the right of politics who think, oh, well, they're basically on the same side as us, but they've got slightly misguided ideas. No.
Yeah.
These people, and if all that stuff I've just said isn't enough, people are literally being arrested for posting on the internet in the middle of the night. That's how bad it's got. That's how prepared they are to exercise state control over people, and they can't be given an inch. This is a war. They are the enemy.
Brilliant. Let me ask you a very quick follow-up on that. So then, in relation to Tommy Robinson, is your point tactical and strategic along the lines you've just made? I'm not going to engage in a ritualistic denunciation of him because that would be to play on their terms, and I refuse to do that as a matter of sort of strategic nous. Or is it also because you partly agree with him, or you think that he's onto something?
Well, I've said what I've said about him. I've never met him. Mm-hmm. I'm pursuing my own political agenda that I believe in. Mm-hmm. I just think what the left want to do is they want to create bogeymen. They're now trying to make Nigel Farage the bogeyman. They are smearing him. And this is what they do. And the right cannot engage in the bogeyman game because, Conor will be the next. Maybe he's already a bogeyman. But,
well, they tried it. Look how that ended up.
In his dreams, he's a bogeyman. But the only thing that Conor's very upset about is he didn't get mentioned by Keir Starmer in his conference speech.
There's always next year. I'm waiting for a full-page Hope Not Hate write-up. I'm competing with Matt Goodwin. He got 3 pages last year.
We just can't even engage with this stuff.
That's right.
That's what I'm saying.
So but the thing is that the Conservative... I don't know if you want to come in here. Sorry, I've been...
Well, no, I was going to say, behind every accusation of racism, sexism, homophobia, Islamophobia, which is a term created by the Muslim Brotherhood, by the way, is the implication that, your response to our provocation is beyond the pale.
Yes.
And therefore, the only legitimate position is opening your borders, transing your children, and turning your country into a halfway house between a failed Soviet state and a caliphate. And so if that's their vision of the future, I actually don't care who you really find repugnant. You are the worst possible people on the earth. And so I'm not going to engage in like political necromancy by turning you into the economic boogeyman, or Mr. Robinson in political necromancy by turning him into the second coming of Adolf Hitler.
Or the cultural boogeyman.
Yeah, I'm just not going to engage on those terms because you're fundamentally disingenuous, want to destroy my country, and therefore it's very encouraging to see the likes of you and the likes of Farage go on the attack when pushed.
The right is definitely growing up in this, and it's excellent to see because the Conservative Party in particular has historically missed this trick that you've been elucidating and that Connor's just added to there. Are you still a member of the Conservative Party? Is it salvageable? And who among its high-profile figures do you regard as sound and roughly in tune with what we've been saying?
I mean, I am a member of the Conservative Party. It's in very, very serious trouble. And it's in serious trouble because it has kowtowed to the left. And the original sin was not repealing all the Blairite laws. Mm-hmm. So essentially, the entire Conservative government for 14 years was run by left-wing rules. Because there are left-wing rules in this country. That's the way the state is run. I've talked about the mentality of the Foreign Office, the Treasury. But it's worse than that because so much of the levers of power were given to the Bank of England, the judiciary, the police chiefs, the senior bureaucrats, that actually, if none of those rules, laws are changed, the Prime Minister is able to do very little. That's the reality of the situation. So my critique of the Conservative Party is failing to do that for 14 years with some exceptions and not really recognising now that was the problem.
Yes. And who is, so you think but do you think it's salvageable?
But I'm not going to go through a list of like who I like and who I don't like in the Conservative Party. I think that's quite well known already. But, I think the battle now is we have a terrible authoritarian Labour government.
Yes.
Who are planning to make things even worse through the introduction of ID cards, through continued failure on the economy, through continued failure on immigration. We need to make damn sure that in 2029, a government gets elected that is able to take them on, but also able to take the British deep state on. That's what I care about. But I'm not going to get into reform, conservatives, all that kind of stuff, because there needs to be a force who just understands how bad things are.
Can I just say one very quick thing? I'm not trying to draw you on like reform Tory stuff. I'm not particularly interested in doing that. What I am actually genuinely curious to know, and what I think viewers are curious to know, is who. You don't even have to be critical of people. Just who in the Conservative Party do you regard as being maybe sort of true converts on these sorts of things? Generic, for instance, is a name that's thrown about. Like who are the high-profile figures in the Tory party?
I haven't seen any evidence. Like I haven't seen probably a single person who said in the Conservative Party the entire Blairite state needs to be repealed.
Good.
I haven't seen a single person say that.
Well, this is part of the follow-up I was going to say.
Sorry.
No, it works perfectly because I think the problem the Conservatives have, barring the people that have just come in like Jack Rankin or Katie Lamb, lots of those people are implicated in passing the laws or failing to repeal the laws that then consolidated the gains of the Blair Revolution.
Yes.
So either they're the likes of our interlocutor over the last few weeks, Mr. Michael Gove, who called himself the heir to Blair and doubled down and appointed lots of civil servants and passed all these laws that made the state worse and therefore can't walk that back, or they effectively rubber stamped with the three-line whip votes things like the Equality Act, the Charities Act, the Public Order Act 2022, and the Boris Wave. And so entrusting some of those people to not just speak out against it, but were they to be re-elected, to then repeal their own laws is tricky, to say the best.
I mean, it's not impossible. If you look at the 70s, they were all part of the Heath government. And Thatcher was education minister in the Heath government, but managed to repudiate the whole thing. I think the issue with the Conservative Party is not enough of the MPs believe that. That's the issue.
Good. It's good to have clarity on that. Very helpful. So you actually did mention digital ID there. We should probably talk about that because I think it violates all of our properly English instincts as sort of Anglo-Saxon lovers of freedom, of an Englishman's home is his castle and all the rest of it. It probably does set up, create the enabling conditions for a surveillance state and a potential social credit system a la China later down the line, or perhaps even immediately. The pretext, of course, is that we need to enforce our borders and the full force of the law and all this sort of thing.
How inspiring.
Very inspiring. I should ask, because you have been not only around this cabinet table, but Prime Minister, in order to enforce our laws against illegal immigration, are these sorts of tactics required?
Well, obviously not. And the problem is that the illegal immigrants are put on the plane and then they get on their phone to the lawyers. They use the Human Rights Act, etc., to stop being deported. So it shows to me the problem is the law.
Yes.
And the problem is the enforcement. The problem isn't that the people can't be identified via an ID card. That is just self-evidently not the problem here.
No.
And so lots of laws need to be changed. Primarily the Human Rights Act needs to be abolished in order to be able to deport illegal immigrants. And, there needs to basically be a presumption that people get deported. That's the way it needs to work. But the ID cards, this is just something that has been pushed, particularly by Blair, but by that group of people for years and years and years. And, it's now a joke, isn't it, that Tony Blair proposes ID cards as a solution to every single problem that's ever emerged. And no doubt everyone in Gaza is going to have a ID card very soon, sponsored by the Tony Blair Institute and all of its corporate partners.
In fairness, they might be needed there. But
I posted on this last week and I said I did not believe it was possible for the British state to actually be able to implement this scheme before 2029.
Yes.
I mean, at DEFRA, I was in charge of the implementation of the RPA computer system, Rural Payments Agency system.
Right.
I took over a project midstream. It was already massively delayed. I discovered that the problematic bits of code were actually in Italian. So the British government had managed to actually buy an off-the-shelf system, I think from Italy or Malta or something, put it into the UK. It didn't work for the needs of British farmers. We then had to get coders to fly in from Milan to recode it.
Oh my gosh.
And essentially the thing didn't work. We just had to do a manual write around.
Right.
There was a promise that we were going to have a single window at the border computer system after Brexit to replace the current customs system. Again, massive delays, didn't work. I don't even know if it's been implemented to this day. It kept being promised and delayed and delayed and delayed. There was also the Cabinet Office tried to introduce a system called Verify that had sort of personal identification to use government services. Again, the attempts to implement this had to be abandoned after millions of pounds have been wasted. And, why is this? It's because the government is completely dysfunctional. It can't operate basic systems because it's a combination of things like public procurement rules, lots of different fiefdoms across government, lack of proper accountability, lack of expertise. So I have absolutely no belief that this thing would get implemented anytime soon, which is a good thing because I think that, in 2029, when a new government gets elected, they can just junk anything. Obviously, more taxpayers' money will be wasted on this nonsense. But from what I've seen from the inside, I just think the government's incapable of implementing it.
That's a relief of a kind. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, obviously the illegal migration issue is just well-polling window dressing for the solution in search of a problem that has been Tony Blair and William Hague, his ostensible enemy's pet project for many years, which is just digital ID. The fact that we already have passports, driver's licenses, national insurance numbers, etc., as a prerequisite for gainful employment hasn't stopped, you ordering on Uber Eats and Amanda meant to be showing up at your door and Abdul.
The problem is that you've got the small boats going over the channel. Nick, people know when the boats are arriving. If the illegal immigrants get arrested and get put on a plane the next day, it's not a problem.
That's exactly
it's just, this is basic stuff.
It lacks any sense of history as well, worth saying too. Mass deportations has been done before. Eisenhower in the 1950s, Operation Wetback, deported 1 million illegals back to Mexico, managed to do so without relying on digital ID, the technology for which probably didn't even exist. And then, of course, Tony Abbott in Australia.
But also,
there is precedent on this.
Also, take the Bell Hotel in Epping.
Well, yeah.
We know where these people are staying.
Oh, yeah.
It's not.
Where are they? Probably in Operation
I wonder who they are in the houses of multiple occupancy that I am personally paying for to put them in random streets.
Exactly.
But it is a difficult problem to deal with. And it does require looking at the Refugee Convention. It requires overturning not just the laws that we've been talking about, like the Human Rights Act and the Constitutional Reform Act, to also make the judiciary accountable again.
Yes.
It also requires changing the entire culture of the British state that has been like that for about 100 years.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who've never been in government who think, oh, this is simple. Let's just deport these people. No, it's not simple. It's very, very difficult to change that type of organisation, that type of culture.
You need to rewire.
Very difficult.
You need to rewire the system before
Completely.
you make it do what you want it to do.
You need to, and you can see Trump with what he's doing with ICE. The American president has much more power of appointment than the British Prime Minister, and yet even Trump is finding a lot of pushback.
Of course.
A lot of pushback to what he's doing.
Well, listen, Liz Truss, it's been very nutritious stuff. Our members have sent in a couple of questions tailor-made for you, which we'd love you to answer in a moment. But for now, thank you for joining us for the main portion of the programme. It's been a real privilege to have you on the show. And Connor, thank you very much. As ever, you've been watching Deprogrammed. Do make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment if you wish to do so. If you'd like to catch the extra members section with Liz Truss, do consider signing up on our website as an NCF member. But for now, we shall see you on the next.
Our mission at the New Culture Forum is and always has been to defend and celebrate Britain's history, culture and its people, and indeed Western civilization, at a time when both are under sustained attack. We have grown from small beginnings to become the country's most influential right-leaning cultural think tank. Our content is watched and read by some of Britain's most influential political figures. But now, we need your help. If you believe in what we do, then please do become a member. For as little as £4 a month, you can make a vital contribution to what we do. As a member of the NCF family, you will help ensure that we can continue to produce quality content online, such as our 3 weekly programmes, Whittle, which is our flagship interview show, Newspeak, our panel discussion show, and Deprogrammed, which is targeted at Britain's youth. As you probably know, in addition, we produce important documentaries, such as our critically acclaimed 6-part series, The West, a stunning celebration of the history and genius of Western civilization. And our ongoing documentary series, Heresies, with hard-hitting episodes tackling subjects such as immigration, gender ideology, and BBC bias. But the New Culture Forum is much more than a YouTube channel. We don't just complain about Britain as it is, we provide real solutions and clear policies on how we can push back against the madness and restore sanity to this nation. Our presenters are now highly sought after and have become familiar faces across the media. Our prestigious annual Smith Lecture and our regional and indeed national conferences have attracted world-class speakers. perhaps most importantly, we are the only organisation on the right of politics that has launched a national movement without actually being a political party. And uniquely, through our NCF Locals programme, we've established some 30 active branches in towns and cities right across the nation, from Edinburgh to Exeter, and with many more on the way. We're very proud of what we've achieved, and our members have made it possible. In return, our members receive access to exclusive content, invitations to private events, free or discounted tickets to our conferences and lectures, free copies of our books, and much more. I very much hope that you'll join us too by clicking the link in the description or going to our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. Now is the time that we need your help. Thank you.